projects that are implemented by Lagos State to build Lagos State into a flood resilient city. I know efforts are ongoing. We want you to educate us on the efforts that have been ongoing.
All right, thank you very much. Wonderful experience to share with people then to see where we are. First of all, I just think is a problem that to live. It's something that if you look at the world in general, particularly this year in 2025, we have problem all over. You can Texas, you look at other climes. Again, people tend to kind of as if it is a problem that is more there to Lagos. However, what I want to share is it is a problem that generates over the world. Hello? The sad story of it, which of course I'm going to get to the good part of it, is presently, I don't think end of flooding is near. Because as long as we have issues with climate change, as long as we keep having sea level predictable weather, we will be having flooding in vulnerable cities like Lagos. What we need to do is to ensure that global... I think I can just keep talking. Can you hear me? Okay, so. All right. I'm told that there is recording. So, as I said, as climate change intensifies, flood risk will also, it's more or less a symbolic thing. For example, last year, there are tremendous melting of glaciers, which if you put it in context, it is almost over 100 million Olympic-sized swimming pool that's melted in 1 year alone. That contributes to about 1 millimeter rise in water level all over the world. Now, that may sound insignificant, but if you look at it year in, year out, you will see that 1 millimeter today, add another 10 years to it, that's 10 millimeter. Just like when David Frame was making a submission yesterday, he was talking about coastal erosion, and he mentioned that over the years we've been having 10 to 20 meters retreat of coastal erosion. The question anybody will ask is, what is 20, what is 10 meters in a year? But over a span of 100 years, that is 1 kilometer that has been eroded off our coast. So what I'm trying to say is, until we address frontally the issue of global change, climate change, that is when we will start having respite with flooding. However, let's now bring it to Lagos context. We know, based on our geography and climate change issues, we are vulnerable to flooding. So what we are doing as a state government is to do a multifaceted action that speaks to addressing flooding. Particularly, what we have done is to expand our drainage channels. By the way, we do have over 200 primary channels that are naturally existing. And what we are doing is just to ensure that we keep them in their perfect state every time. So what we are doing is to ensure that we expand them, and also we have put a lot of efforts into planning, and then also providing resilient infrastructure. Let me give an example. For example, we noticed that there is nothing we will do in Lagos Island that will be able to deflood Lagos Island by gravity. So what we are introducing is to start introducing pump stations to ensure that, okay, we elevate, we are given almost all our streets minimum threshold height that they have to get to, so that at least we'll have head to be able to pump. But additionally, and one of the things that we will be seeing from next year is we want to also start introducing nature-based solutions. We have tried gray infrastructure. We've seen that that is leading us to somewhere. But if we couple it, if we add nature-based solution to what we have, I believe we will be able to get a greater mileage than what we have now. So I will rest then.
Thank you very much. I want to say that with what you've told us, it's evident that Lagos State is taking giant strides as regards this issue. Being the fact that it's a global issue, there's still much to be done. And that will take me to my next question, still on water, that I will be directing to our panelists. Engineer Tijani, the Managing Director, Lagos Water Corporation. My question for you is to tell us the biggest barriers to achieving universal water access in Lagos. You're not just going to tell us the barriers, you're going to tell us the partnership, the role that partnership can make in assessing or reducing the effect of these challenges.
Hello? Okay. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Maybe I'll take the question, I'll just walk back into the partnership aspect, and then we'll speak about some barriers that are affecting universal access to water. As for partnerships, I think from the theme of the panel, I will start talking about resilience just for a few seconds before we go into the actual. Resilience for me is something that requires full partnership across MDAs. Not just MDAs in government, you also require a lot of partnership from the citizens of the communities we live in to ensure that when we are building a resilient city, everybody understands the part they play. Just like the permanent secretary had mentioned, a lot of things we do have very minimal impact to you when you are doing it. But if you look at it holistically, a 1 millimeter rise in sea level every year, in the next 10, 100 years, you could tell some cities could be subsumed underwater. So resilience is something, I think clearly the Chief Resilience Officer is here. She will probably speak a bit more about it, but it's something we all need to understand our roles and play it as seriously to ensure we don't get into a position where the issues become almost unsurmountable. Now, moving into the water thing itself, water is at the core of almost every environmental challenge. It's either there's too much water leading to flooding, or there's too little water, having droughts, or you have water but the quality is questionable. So at every step you take in the environmental challenge or the climate change discussion, water will confront you. A lot is being done by the Lagos State government to ensure we provide universal access to potable water to the citizens. I'll just speak a bit on maybe the background, and then I'll go into a bit more detail. We have water treatment plants all over the state, right? We have major treatment plants that take their water from an open source, a river, then we treat it, and then we pump it around long distances through large pipes around the state. Then in areas where the major treatment plants maybe don't get to insufficient pressure, we put micro and mini treatment plants. We have 48 of those smaller ones around the state, and we have 4 of the major treatment plants around the state. Lagos was the first place in Nigeria to have a major water treatment plant in 1905. In fact, it predates the existence of Nigeria itself. So if you want some history, we can tell you a lot about water treatment, and people from foreign countries used to come to look at this equipment in the 50s and 60s to replicate it in their own countries. So we have a decent amount of infrastructure on the ground to provide water at varying levels of capacity utilization. The current infrastructure would cover, if working at full capacity, about half of the state, right? From a geographic perspective, right?
Barriers.
About half of the state. And so there's a lot that needs to be done from a brownfield perspective to bring what we have now up to full capacity. Then there's now the greenfield one, which will mean building new treatment plants to cater for the other half. As you know, Lagos is just 0.4% of the country's land mass.
Thank
and
you.
Sits on.
Very much. I actually asked for barriers, and
Okay.
I was wishing you
And
could
so
just mention
I'll jump
one or
right
two.
into the barriers.
Yes.
So the barriers that we have is just infrastructure development, right? We've had population growth outstrip infrastructure development in the state, and that's just cuts across a lot of sectors. But water is an obvious one because everybody needs water to function. There are other barriers also. Groundwater extraction, which is people drilling, I don't call it unlicensed, but unregulated boreholes, right? That affects everybody. It's part of the things that could lead to other climate issues in the future. And maybe if I can think of one more barrier to just general attitudes, behaviors, people need to understand you have to pay for water. Yes. So even where we're providing water, getting the small tariff payment is almost impossible. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, sir. It's difficult for you to convince us well enough that we have to pay for the water at this part of the world. But thank you for that interesting dialogue. I will be channeling the question to our Chief Resilient Officer in Lagos State, who is very germane to this panel, because we are talking of building resilience here. And I want to ask you, ma'am, how is resilience being mainstreamed into the city's development, especially in sectors like housing, transportation, and water, coming from an angle of the rapid development we have in major cities like Lagos State?
Thank you very much. So I'll start from the definition of resilience. So what do we define as resilience for us in the urban space? We say resilience is the capacity of communities, individuals, businesses, systems, institutions within Lagos to survive, adapt, and grow despite any shock or any challenge that Lagos experiences. By shocks, we mean sudden sharp events that threaten a city. You don't know when they will happen, but when they happen, they have devastating consequences, like your floods, for instance. Yes. As in economic downturns, fire outbreaks, building collapse, and the likes. And then by chronic stresses, we mean cyclical events that weaken the fabric of the city on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the population of Lagos, whether it's our physical and social infrastructure, whether it's our inadequate health system sometimes, as in inadequate to meet the capacity, the population of the state, whether it's in terms of the inadequate public transportation system that we have. So when you look at it, realize that when you talk about resilience, it's something that, whether you like it or not, needs to be mainstreamed. So when you talk about putting it in the housing sector, in the built environment generally, you know that you do not have a choice. I think you need to think about how will people survive in Lagos despite the housing challenge. I think what are the things that you need to put in place to ensure that people have access to equitable, affordable housing. And for us, what we've done as a state in that space is to begin to look at new construction methods. Housing is expensive. We know that there's a deficit in the states as it currently serves. Some estimates have shown, for instance, that we have over 3 million deficits. And I'm sure if we look at it properly, we'll realize that it might even be much more than that. As in, how do you ensure that people are able to access housing, especially in this climate-impacted world that we are living in? And what Lagos State has done has been multifaceted, because when we look at affordability, it's different for everyone. So what the low-income person classifies as affordability is different from what the high-income groups classify as affordability. And Lagos State has begun to work across the various spectrums. So we have the outright sales of houses that people can buy. We have the rent-to-own, that if you cannot afford to buy at once, you're able to rent and maybe you own later. We're beginning to partner with developers to be able to build low-income housing. We're also putting in place a developing housing fund, as in that hasn't been launched. The bill is still being drafted. I know it will go to the House of Assembly soon. And the idea is, can we put funds together that have low interest rates for developers to actually build? Because one of the issues has been around the cost of actually building. Aside that, there's a lot of sensitization that is also going on out there, as in, you don't need to own a house. You can rent. There's nothing wrong with renting. As in, people think that they need to own a house. It's not everybody that needs to own. And there are also discussions around land use, especially how do we ensure that land-owning families do not own their houses, which is around tenements, as in tenures, security of tenures, and the likes. And it's just to ensure that the different spectrum are able to have a safe place to actually put their heads. And it's going to get worse, as in when we begin to look at extreme heat, extreme rainfall, and sea level rise. Meaning that some people that are currently living in areas that they think are protected from this will be impacted by it very, very soon. And because of that, if we look at extreme heat, we're already beginning to think about mainstreaming climate assessment or climate risk into our building codes. Lagos State government is really working on how to green our building codes, as in currently, and it's really around how do we maximize energy efficiency without having to do active measures. For instance, cool roofs, as in painting buildings white, as in things that help us actually address the various climate risks that actually exist. How are we looking at building and elevating our houses, as in what are the minimum standards for how high your house should be so that water doesn't go into it when it floods? And the real idea is, how do we ensure that climate risk assessments are embedded into government budgets, government plans, government programs, and ensuring that the infrastructure designs that we actually have now are beginning to think of the fact that, just as PS said, adaptation is the reality that we might have to put in place. We might have to live with these risks, whether we like it or not. So what we can do is beginning to prepare for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've said a lot, and one thing that I think I'm taking home from that is that adaptation is the key. We have to live with it, and if we have to live with it, then we must build our resilience. For example, during COVID, the world went into sleep, and we just had to survive with it. So that's one of the reasons we are here. Thank you very much for that, ma'am. Mr. Kwayemi Orinowo. So now you are from the Netherlands, and we would love to have some tips from you on helping way forward, because we know that Netherlands is known for their expertise in flood resilience. So what are the keys or some things you think Lagos can learn from Dutch model of living with water?
Right. Thank you very much. Well, I'm not sure I'm an expert to speak for on behalf of the Netherlands. I work for the mission, but of course I can do share for some tips in terms of what works. And we're a member of the Lagos State Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan, or the committee, the secretariat, as well as the Water Partnership. So we do attend and see some of the project development. And I would say right now that it's the first step in the right direction, an integrated plan that is holistic, that brings together multi-departments, Ministry of Planning, Works, Water, everybody coming together. But we need to take it a step further through an executive order to make it a binding document, a binding with the full powers of the executive and the legislation. So it's beyond, this feel good to have, but putting some intentionality behind it, true state power. Well, I think the biggest elephant in the room comes down to resources, access to finance to do this project. I've seen some projects of water corporation, and I look at the billions, and I'm like, hey, where are they going to get this kind of money from? And it comes down to, we need to, there is floating capital indeed, that is, focused on climate. For example, we just launched something called the Public Facilities Program through Invest International, that provides 30% of financing, total financing, up unto $75 million for public good projects, which climate adaptation and water projects would fall into, right? But it must be also subject to showing that you can get the 65%, which can also come from Invest, and also show that, the financing model, we have to pay for water. There is no way we won't pay for water, Water is a public good without a doubt. That is where concessional financing, blended financing comes in which you're able to access grants. But however, it must show sustainability, even if it's patient capital that is required. The states must also work its stock. I was in one of the NCAP meetings when we're talking about sovereign guarantees, and the state officials were very much against that, to say, the state is not going to guarantee. I think if we're really serious about real mobilizing capital, the state has to provide some kind of guarantees. Nobody's going to bring their money and just think that, it's going to be paid by hook or crook. So the state must show its ability to back this if it means additional or strengthen the business case, right? And also, I think it's also important, going by the experience of what has worked in the global north, is also to start small. I think it's not practical to put, you want $30 billion and you want to immediately push that into the system. I think we can start with a more modular and then scale up some of these projects. So I think these are some of the lessons we can take away in terms of access to finance and mobilizing required capital. So just to ensure that, I'm also mentioning what is available on our side. We also have a program called the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, which is housed by SMV in Abuja, which also provides financing options for projects like this. But like I mentioned, the more the merrier. It's always a certain percentage. What other concessional financing can be explored, to fund this project?
Thank you very much. I will take the question back to Engineer Adigbite Olakunle. And now we've heard a lot about financing, about partnership, about collaborations. And we know collaboration is crucial in resilience building. So how is the Office of Drainage Services and Water Resources partnering with other ministries to make Lagos State future ready for climate resilient community?
How or what we should be doing?
Oh.
No,
What?
I'm just trying to look at the two questions, making it one. First thing I would like to say, perhaps, everybody think that we must go to Holland, we must go to all these fantastic places to learn about resilience when it comes. Again, I tell people, have you been to Makoko? They've always been living in water. And I don't think any of them do complain about flooding. Not because there is no flooding, but because they are so resilient. And they have the capacity to just... Again, I'm not saying that is the best we can do, but if we try to mainstream, if we try to just look at that way and try to just bring it up and see the best we can do for them, that is on one side. Now, on the issue of what we can do to ensure that the first thing I will say is, of course, there is a lot of collaboration. Madam, she has been harassing us to produce 1 or 2 reports, which we have been doing. But essentially, what I think we will now is looking at that, our LCAP, and try to mainstream it into planning of the states so that every environmental officer, everyone that has something to do with environment building, try to embed that LCAP into their program. So what am I trying to say? For example, you want to build a school. It is not after you have finished building the school that you now come and start asking me to come and provide drainage. It's at that point, it is almost as if there is nothing I can do. I will only tell you that, okay, dude, but if at the beginning of that project I'm involved, I can tell you that, make sure you raise your building to this height, make sure that we have this so and so in place. So that way, so what I'm trying to say in essence is, especially for our planners, is to make sure that we have a program that try to make sure that everything we do is in line with our LCAP, because I know that those things are well established in that document. Aside from that, we do have series of early warning systems. We do have, so for collaboration, we collaborate with all agencies, both internal and external. And I'm going to take up my brother in especially everything that he has mentioned, because again, we are very open to all suggestions. The World Bank, I can see my sister from IFC, we've been discussing. So again, we are open to all sorts of collaboration, but I can say, again, to go back to what you just mentioned, I mean, when he was trying to answer that we do not want to give sovereign grants, we do, except that we need to make sure that the business case is solid enough. It's not something that we just throw the states. There are so many bogus plans that people will come up with. So that's the first thing we'll first of all say. Go and make your plans watertight, because yesterday the AG was, the Accountant General was around, and there are so many forms of finances that we have attempted. We have tried so much, and we are still trying so much. So we are open to collaboration. We have been dealing with every board, but most importantly, what I will say is let us start, especially on the aspect of PPP. Everybody think that drainage provision must be only by government. But I tell you, government cannot do it alone, especially in terms of, I just mentioned something that we want to start nature-based solution. What people see mostly is when there's any vacant land, they think that they must have a building over, but we can have green spaces, which we don't have. We can have a lot of retention parks, which we don't have. Those are the things that we want to start putting into our programs, because, again, if you look at the whole of Lekki, you hardly find anywhere that water can reside in the meantime. But we need those places, and that is what we are going to try to achieve.
Thank you very much, sir. And you really shed a lot of light on what we're talking about. At first, I love your points when you mentioned we don't need to go to Poland, we don't need to go to foreign countries to adapt, because most of the times we have to take a bottom-up approach, whereby whatever it is we are bringing must be adaptable. Some innovations will come from developed worlds, and at the end of the day, it doesn't fit into the grassroots system. I've also worked on Makoko water body, and I can relate to what you're talking about. And this will take me to my second question, which I'll be relating to our chief resilient officer. I keep calling the chief resilient officer because resilience is what we are actually talking about now. I am an academics, and I'm coming from the academia. And we do a lot of research. We have a lot of data. Like I said, I've done a lot of research work on Makoko. So I want to ask you now, what efforts, how are you integrating data into your work to give evidence-based solutions? Is there a platform for that? Do you think you're doing well enough? And what are the opportunities for doing better?
Okay, it's on. Thank you very much. Okay. Data, when I hear data, my heart does them. I said, because one issue that we've had has been the dearth of available data. It's a major issue for us. And what we have done, so we collaborate with academia. Let me put that one out there first of all. Data is very important to us, and it's data that helps us data that helps us put in place the right interventions in the right place at the right time to ensure that there's a minimal loss to lives and property. And in doing this resilience work, what we have realized is beyond just having primary data, there's a need for us to be able to analyze and process this data in a way that allows us to make interventions at the right time. And for us in the Resilience Office, what we have begun to do is to develop something that we call the Lagos Resilience Intelligence System. It's not public yet, and we hope that it will be public very soon. And what we have done is we've begun to mine data around different risks that exist in Lagos. We have begun to model this risk based on available data. And the idea is for us to be able to recommend interventions to be put in place in different sectors at the right time. Interventions could be, where do we direct more funding? Where do we put in place more infrastructure? Where do we put in place more schools? based on different parameters. It could also be, where do we even put more streetlights, as in based on different parameters. So we began to look at things like insecurity. Let me start with insecurity, because that we've gone far on. It's around which local governments are safer, or what is going on real time. We can even mine from social media, as in, so what's the conversation that people are having? Are there places where we're saying, okay, maybe more robberies are taking place, or people feel safer? And can we divert funds from those areas into other areas, and what interventions per se? We're looking around things around risks around flooding, as in to say, okay, can we see where waste is being packed on time? Waste is being evacuated, let me use the right word, on time. Where are we seeing that there could be issues? Where are the drainages being cleaned? Different primary level data, as in that we're able to integrate. And the idea is to be able to help government efficiently and effectively deploy limited resources. Because the truth is, whether we like it or not, government would like to do everything and address every risk at the same time, but it's not possible. But we can work to address a few risks at the same time, especially risks that are interdependent, as in some things work together. If you put in place, for instance, street lights, people are able to drive safely. I'm using that just as an example. People feel safer. People can work later into the night, which also helps the economy. And it's looking at those risks in those types of interdependencies that we're trying to identify where should interventions go. And we're also very, very particular about which interventions need to happen now. I'll give you an instance. So around our work, I remember when we were working in 2019, we're doing the various stakeholder engagements. And just to say that some of the data that we get is from stakeholder engagements, not necessarily from research. It's from conversations that we'll have with the different kinds of stakeholders that we have. And at that point in time, from the conversations we were having, we could tell that riots or civil unrests were imminent. And this was 2019, as in based on how dissatisfied, as in people were with governance generally. We put it in our strategy. We identified different things that we could do as government on the long term. But guess what? The civil unrest eventually happened, and it happened in 2020. So imagine if we had a system in place that could say, government, you need to do something right now. And that could have been averted. And that's why we believe that data deployment, data analysis, data management generally, especially now with the advent of AI that helps us to improve those prediction models, is very, very important, because it allows government to act at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was well spot on. But I would still want to take you on I just want to say something about data and about research. You talked about the death of data. At times, it might not be death, it might be accessibility, because there is no much connection. See the summits, I would not really see people like myself from the academic angle. I want to tell you, for example, for my institution, because that's my field, we have so much data, but unfortunately, they lie on the bookshelf. So it's definitely a big ball game. It's not something we are here to discuss, but there should be more connection between parastatals like yours, ministries like yours, MDAs, policymakers, and research, and academics. Whatever it is we're doing, we should be able to integrate our knowledge together and work forward. And that will bring me to the next question, which I'll be directing to you from the water. I want to ask the efforts, or can you just tell us the role that technology is taking now? Because we know presently there's a lot of technological advancement, and you talked about AI, which I think that's the level and the way we should all be looking forward to and we should be going to. So what role has your parastatal done, your ministry worked in line with using technology to monitor water use and to improve its availability, making it sustainable, available for us at all times for use?
Okay, thank you. Water treatment and water distribution and even metering of water. Metering is maybe the end that you see a bit some new technology. But the treatment of water and distribution is age-old technology. It's nothing, frankly, particularly new. Yes, there's things like desalination has come more recently, and reverse osmosis. But the fortunate thing we have here in this, in Lagos in particular, we have enough source of fresh water and groundwater, in fact, still fresh water, and that we don't need to explore real complex technologies to abstraction and treatment of water. Of course, like I said, in metering, we have all the new technology here as to also for gathering data on customer use and just payment from the customer's position. But I think if I would take this opportunity to maybe speak a bit about what we are doing, also to infuse more technology into our ecosystem in the portable water space, is we recently launched a PPP, Public-Private Partnership Initiative, for some of our water treatment plants I spoke about earlier. And, in line with everything we've spoken about, partnering, collaborating, and access to finance and all other things, considering the quantum of money required to build water treatment and maintain it. So what we've done is we've opened up the space for people that have experience in this field to come and participate as partners with us in some of our locations that we will be giving out on a concessionary basis. It's a pilot because we're only starting with less than 10% of our total asset base, but it will be for long tenures. So when I say pilot, people think maybe it's 3-5 years. No, we intend to have it for a long period. So whoever ends up with the infrastructure will have the time to inject capital to rehabilitate or improve the state of the water treatment plant, and also recoup his investment through tariffs over time. We're reviewing bids now. We're hoping before the end of the year we can have preferred bidders, and we'll be going into commercial conversations with them.
Thank you.
That should also infuse technology.
Yeah, thank you very much. We should be rounding up our session gradually, and with that, my next question for you, Mr. Okoyemi Orinowo, because for panels like this, you should be able to come up with actionable points. COP30 is coming up, communiques in which we can present, and results in which we can bring to show how far Lagos has gone and to be able to put Lagos on the world map. So my next question for you now is for you to tell us what you think can be the actionable bold steps that Lagos State can take within the next 5 years to build a climate resilient city. This question will just cut across everyone, and please let's be brief. So I'll start with you, Mr. Shem.
Right. So I was just going to just buttress or speak to what PS said earlier. Well, let me add that it's so interesting that the Netherlands and Lagos has some similarities. The Netherlands has 60% below seawater, and also the experience of flooding and all that is also a very similar experience. And I think one of the takeaway, one of the key lessons, you made reference to Makoko, is the concept of living with water and not against it, right? And I also like your definition of resilience as not something as an afterthought. We don't have to wait for the crisis to happen, right? So when we have the data, we're able to plan and mitigate. So resilience is not waiting to suffer. That, okay, when it happens now, government needs to start running helter-skelter. The data has already shown that this is likely to happen. How do we plan? Not to make it an afterthought, but in our building plans, in our drainage plans, in the way in which, we structure society, data is at the very core of decision-making, not only for government, but also citizens' action. So I think that's definitely a key lesson I would take. But of course, I'm a big champion, or I'm a fan of bottom-up development and context-based planning. I think that I would say, like I mentioned, I think Lagos is on the right course with the LPAP, with the water partnership, working with a lot of development partners. I think it's just time to put, I always say people need to put their money where their mouth is, right? So I think it's important right now for the state. I like that, the conversation on sovereign guarantees has not been wiped out or ruled out. So there's a possibility for that. So I think it's time that the state puts also itself as an investor on the table to show that we are ready to be investors in this as well. And, every other, the global community who is ready to walk that talk with the states can then, also be a part of that journey. And like I mentioned, we are not the only ones with instruments that, can support this. The idea is the money is so much. to move it forward. And I think it needs to be harnessed across development partners to take that journey forward. And of course, COP30 is another platform to, mobilize stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tijani. Okay, actionable steps that can be taken by Lagos State to build a climate resilient city for the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you. I'll be quite similar to what Mr. Okoyemi said. I think implementation is the next thing now. We have the plan. I think we need to move into deepening the plan and imbibing it into everything we're doing. So there should be actionable steps and who's responsible for doing what that we should be, taking on course right now.
Thank you. Ms. Daniel?
Thank you very much. So Lagos State has developed the Lagos State Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan. In that plan, we have identified over 33 projects that will cost us over $9 billion to implement. And if we don't implement, can bring upon Lagos different scenarios, as in that could cost Lagos State up to $40 billion in losses. So the next step for us as Lagos is to mobilize investments, as in to implement that plan. We're open to de-risking the efforts as much as possible to make sure that investors feel safe in bringing their money for us to be able to implement those projects. And the question I keep asking people is...
Thank you, ma'am. We got the point. Engineer, okay. Our time is up. Thank you.
All right. I will close by saying that our water systems all over the world is a connected system. And while you think disrupting a wetland in Alimosho may not affect you directly, but it will affect people around the downstream, around Lekki here. So it means that we must make sure that whatever you are doing is in tandem with the state agenda. Particularly, I must say that starting from next year, our LCAP should be mainstream in such a way that, thank God we have our legislation here. Let us make it into a law that all approvals and all planning must be in tandem with the LCAP. I think if we start with that.
Thank you very much. Please, can you give this season panelists a round of applause? From our session today, we have talked about building Lagos State into a more climate resilient city. And we've learned that it's not a job for one parastatal, one ministry or one individual. It's a job for all. Partnership is important. It involves a lot of finance. So I want to just encourage you all to tell you that together we can. We will move forward and to put Lagos State on the map, to be a model for other major cities in the world to tap from. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
So we would like a group photograph. Can I have the commissioner please join the panelists? Thank you so much. And the permanent secretary, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sas and Ma. So, please, we can all leave for the next, to register for the next plenary session. Panel session, yes, after this. After registration, we'll have the next one simultaneously, just as we've had this. So to our delegates, please let's proceed to register for the next panel session. Please, let's vacate the room and go out and register for the next panel session, please. The next panel session in this room is transitioning energy, industry and transport. While for the other breakout room, it is unleashing enablers and accelerators, finance, technology, capacity building. Please, let's exit the hall because the next panel session is on transitioning energy, industry and transport. Please. While the second breakout room will be about unleashing enablers and accelerators, finance, technology and capacity building. We are done with this panel session. Let's move out so that those coming in for transitioning energy, industry and transport can come in and take their seats after registration. Thank you. For those going to the Abuja room, the topic will be unleashing enablers and accelerators, finance, technology, capacity building. While for here it is transitioning energy, industry and transport. The second session here is transitioning energy, industry and transport. Ma, this session is about transitioning energy, industry, and transport. To our distinguished delegates, please let me remind you that this panel session has the title Transitioning Energy, Industry and Transport. That is what we're having here. If you are for the other topic, which is Unleashing Enablers and Accelerators, Finance, Technology and Capacity Building, that will take place at the Abuja room. That is the Abuja room. But here, the Victoria room is transitioning energy, industry, and transport.